Nice to see you.
Yeah, take a seat. Hey, so the last time I saw you,
Yes.
you still had the same pair of glasses on, and you're known for changing them all the time. What's that all
about? It means I've been traveling a lot, and I haven't had time to buy any new pairs.
Fantastic. Hey, listen, we're going to talk a lot about influencer marketing again.
Yes.
Very different perspective than before, though, right? We're going to talk about more about the influencers rather than the actual content itself. So, but why don't you get started and tell everybody a little bit more about who you are and Mobcrush, and just explain that first.
Sounds good. I'm Greg Essig. I've had a little bit over a decade experience in games. I started at CAA, where I represented independent developers and negotiated publishing arrangements for them, as well as other business development externally. Then I moved on to Apple, where I was lucky enough to be there early on in sort of the rush to the beautiful mobile world that we've seen today, where I really helped sort of guide developers on launch strategy and business strategy during sort of the formative early years of mobile development, where we were all changing over to free-to-play. And in November of last year, I left to go to a Chinese startup called Fun Plus, where we launched a free-to-play focused mobile publishing division, and finally I joined Mobcrush about three months ago. Mobcrush is really it's a streaming service dedicated to mobile games and the community around them. But unlike sort of some of the other streaming services you see in the ecosystem, we're really focused on honing the experience for the mobile audience and sort of empowering what we see as the next generation, the next billion mobile streamers and personalities to reach their own audiences and find their own voices.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, one of the things you've maintained, and you've told me this before, is that you think that gamers, players, they're getting most of their information today from a different source to maybe, 5 or definitely 10 years ago. I mean,
yes.
What is that? Tell us how that works.
Well, I think at its core, these people, they really just want to find sort of authentic voices, just like their hometown friends. They really want to just hang out with people who they respect and understand and hear what they like. That's a more powerful message. This day and age, we're all bombarded by even more and more marketing and advertising messages, and so I think especially the youth of the world doesn't really understand what's authentic and what's credible anymore. And so they're going back to the basics, and they're going back to real humans and trying to determine from real people what is applicable to them.
Is that because as marketers, and I've been a marketer, we keep on broadcast, and people are getting a little bit sick and tired of it?
I think absolutely.
All right, so is this different in a mobile environment? Because mobile is quite unique.
Yep.
We've all got a smartphone with us all the time.
Yep.
But it's a very different format. It's a very different experience than on a TV or than on a computer. So, how is it different from mobile, and how does that work?
Well, I think it's easier with mobile. We all carry these now powerful desktop class sort of devices in our pockets, and what's really missing is sort of the software tools and also guidance on how to hone in on their own voice to empower that next generation of sort of influencers. We all have now the tools in our pockets and sort of in theory, but nobody's really come out of the space to sort of show this next generation the way to talk to new users. And so I think mobile is really the next generation of influencer marketing sort of sourcing, because there is no barrier to entry. There's no requirement of capture cards. There's no requirement for sort of hardcore rigs. While that does elevate the production value, it's not necessary for sort of traction, because as long as you have that credible, authentic voice that still sort of speaks to a certain target marketplace, it doesn't matter what production value you have these days. Additionally, they sort of cater to our lifestyles. We're all over the place, and the idea of sort of programming and scheduling your content distribution strategy is a bit old school. You know, it needs to be done more spur of the moment and more, I think, passion driven. Whereas you're in a great environment and you find something that you really want to talk to people about, share that to your consumers. The next generation of viewers loves that specific call to action. Right. Not only come watch me now, but come watch me now because this is the only time I'm going to be talking about it. That message speaks really, I think, powerfully to the next generation, and sort of cuts through the noise that we're talking about of, you know, other sorts of just generic call to actions that we see in sort of the everyday marketing of the world.
That's an interesting point. I mean, how much of that come watch me now because you may never see this again has been driven by the massive surge of things like Periscope, Meerkat, Snapchat?
Yep. I think a lot of it, and I think we're only going to see more. That's very, you know, especially in today's world where everybody is sort of viewing these content, you know, this sort of content. I think the ability to find and identify and then share the most relevant content, or at least the coolest content to your friends, can be really powerful as well. And so everybody's sort of searching for that limited experience or that exclusive access to what is, you know, the best of their social group.
So look, everyone can be a streamer,
yeah.
Right? We've got the mobile devices. We can do it anytime we like. The apps are out there. From a gaming perspective, the apps are out there as well. We can all share our games, and we can do it on our tablets, on our smartphones, whatever.
Yep.
But not everyone can be an influencer. What highlights someone as an influencer?
I really think it's personality, as well as sort of the cognizant of understanding who your viewers are and reaching out to them. It's having a conversation versus preaching. You know, I'm up here right now talking to you, but I should be better at sort of including the viewers in this. And this is what influencers are the best at. This is how they really hone their craft, is understanding where their viewers are coming from and creating those personal conversations and personal relationships with each and every one of them. Even if they can't do that at scale, you know, figuring out where the grouping and the communities are and then targeting those as well. You know, and this is something we've talked about sort of offline, which is, you know, also leveraging as many channels that are possible to sort of reach those viewers, because different viewers in different groups and communities sort of engage through different channels.
So that's an interesting point. I mean, recently there was a little bit of a thing online.
Yeah.
VentureBeat broke some news about the fact that Amazon were blocking sales of the Chromecast because Chromecast didn't offer the Amazon Prime Video app.
Yep.
Right. Now that's one way of going about your business.
Yep.
Other ways of going about your business is to just be inclusive of absolutely everything.
Totally.
Right? And allow every kind of content, even if it's coming from a competitor.
Yeah.
And what do you think is the best strategy? I mean,
so I definitely think the open strategy is the best strategy. I think in these early days where we're really sort of determining and I guess trailblazing what I think the next generation of sort of influencer and celebrity sort of content is going to be, the best strategy is the one that benefits the people with the voice. And those are the community leaders, the influencers, the personalities that are driving this whole revolution. And for their businesses, you know, they need to be able to sort of transact with their consumers and have those conversations in whatever channels and whatever existing social graphs those users are using. And so I think the restrictive approach is one strategy, and you know, Amazon definitely probably has their reasoning behind that, but to me the best approach is opening it up and focusing on the content that they're talking about, as well as, again, enabling those conversations between fan and influencer.
And it's economically speaking, it's a good way to go about things, right? Because I guess what we're talking about is the difference between maintaining the same piece of the pie,
yeah,
but making the pie bigger, right? So the same percentage, but of a bigger pie. Because if you allow everybody to talk about everything, you're just stirring the pot for everyone, right?
Yep. I think it benefits all of us. You know, especially sort of this leading class of influencers. They're running their brands as a business. You know, they are now a business, and so offering them the tools and an additional channel for them to reach potentially a new audience, I think is much more beneficial from a business strategy than trying to restrict them or lock them into an exclusivity that they might feel negative about farther down the line.
So, look, what is it about the act of spectating that people find absolutely fascinating?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a combination. I think what we're seeing on Mobcrush is sort of this clear segmentation between the people who want to be empowered and educated by professional players, and those are the ones who take gaming very seriously and either aspire to be professional players or just level up their existing sort of gaming life. And they're looking for, I think, a different style of content than sort of the rest of them, which are looking for personalities that are tastemakers and influencers in sort of how they consume content, but also just are entertaining at their core. And so I think you have both, sort of the players, the professional players of the world being personalities, but training and empowering users, as well as then those professional players maybe on the flip side in sort of an alternate life, sort of being real people and just talking about what they enjoy without that sort of, without that restriction or sort of closed view of just purely gameplay.
Right. And for everybody out there on Twitch who's playing the cliche drinking game, they can all take a drink because you said level up.
So, yes, level up.
Nice one. So look, let's talk about the future. We want to make sure we get to the future of live streaming.
Yeah.
And more specifically, how will mobile change the paradigm?
Well, I think mobile just unlocks the next generation. So, the current channels in use, I think, are fantastic for the platforms that they currently are really focused on, which is, the console and PC space. But they are somewhat restrictive and targeted, which is, a double-edged sword. It's great for them because they have this targeted, highly engaged, probably what I would call hyper-engaged user group that is looking specifically for gaming, spectation, empowerment, and educational content. But they haven't, what I haven't seen happen is really the unlocking of these other personality-based streamers and what I would consider more of a mass audience approach, just the pure entertainment of spectating games as well as talking about whatever they want, sort of with this general game subculture being the base of it. And that's where mobile really opens it all up. Like I've said earlier, we have these devices in our pockets. We're already carrying with them. There's no barrier to entry from a hardware standpoint or really software standpoint. All it takes is a download and one of these services like Mobcrush that's going to allow for live streaming on device, spur of the moment, and an ability to reach potentially a new audience with a new voice. I think the next step really is then honing those voices, empowering them with even more tools to level up, and identifying the ones who have the most traction.
All right, so let's break it down for the last few minutes of today's section. Let's talk to a couple of different types of the audience out there. We've got lots of different people watching online.
Yep.
Let's talk to the people who want to be the viewers. So how can people discover streaming content and creators to watch right now today?
The best way really still is word of mouth, unfortunately. And if you already are a fan of certain sort of content, I will say the community of sort of game streamers is pretty tight, and they do a really good job of positioning and helping their friends and sort of driving traffic between the two. I think we will see more and more of those tools come out into the market space. I already know of things I can't talk about confidentially, but there are people working on sort of building out that ecosystem and that sort of referential side of the business.
And from marketers, what can you expect from influencers, and how do you approach them? Because that's a really important.
Yeah. Well, I think the first step of it is understanding what your message is. I think a lot of sort of brand sponsors are used to working with more advertising, and they come in with, in my opinion, a bit too of a heavy-handed approach. This is not the place to advertise to these users. This is the place to align with their passions. And if you can come in there with an alignment and with some sort of message that brings it back to the game, to the actual content that they're there watching, that's a powerful piece. But if you're just there to sort of sell some new product that has, like, I don't want to say a name, but let's say you're a chip brand, it doesn't make sense. I mean, that's where I think marketers break down on this influencer side. And so first step is understanding who you're working with and the audience and the message that you're trying to portray. And then the next step really is finding a partner that is just as excited about your product as you are. Because, you know, that, again, back to the basics, that organic passion is what's going to come through to the audience.
Fantastic. I mean, give me a good example. You must have seen lots of examples of people doing it right. So give me a good example of somebody doing it right.
Well, I mean, without saying, I mean, PewDiePie does it really right. Like, he had everything I've seen him sort of work with, especially in sort of the mobile gaming space, he seemed to have a lot of fun with. In some cases, I think he has more fun with it than even the developers themselves. But that's what his viewers are looking for. That's what they want to see. They're there for him. They're not there for the games that he's bringing to the table. And so he needs to have fun with it, because otherwise his viewers won't tune back in. And so I think he's a great example. He is definitely an aspirational figure. Of course, he's so big. But, you know, outside of that, there's several others. You know, I think actually Coca-Cola does a really good job in the esports space. They're less heavy-handed, but they work more with influencers, just strictly on the sponsorship and sort of empowerment sort of you know, space. They did the same thing with American Idol, just putting the Coke cups on the stage, where it was sort of like, we are involved here, and we're not going to like throw Coke down your throat, but we are involved here because we believe this is the right thing to do for our mutual fans and our mutual users.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. But not everyone is a PewDiePie, right?
It's totally.
And if we look at, you know, traditional influencer marketing, it's pretty easy to get a measurement of who is influential right now in the areas that you care about, so that you can align with them. What is more difficult is how you identify the people that are going to be influential next and start working with them. So how do you identify those up-and-comers?
So I would say the first step is actually to start, it's a startup approach. Start failing and learning from those failures. There are now tools out in the marketplace and so many channels for you to just create a presence. Create a presence, that's the first step. Don't overplan it, don't over-engineer it. Start talking about what you want to talk about and having fun. And if you start getting traction on certain styles and not on other styles, that's good indication that, you know, you should go down specific routes. But I really think, given the tools out there these days, there's no reason not to start. And so it's early days. And you look at early days in any sort of, you know, platform paradigm, it's sort of like they always copy the previous platform, because that's what you know to do. That's the easiest way to sort of enter it. And I think from there you can really dictate sort of what is next. But there is no great solution of understanding. That's what I'm talking about with this segmentation between sort of esports. Everybody, when they think of live streaming of games, instantly goes to esports. And esports is phenomenal and great for those types of users, the people who want that content. But there's a vast group of spectators potentially who want to watch gaming content from more of a culture perspective and more of a personality-driven perspective. And they're going to be looking for personalities and you know, sort of opinions that matter most to them. And I think have a point of view, start streaming, and be on as many channels as possible to, you know, sort of get your early traction. And based on that traction and based upon where you're seeing success, you can start to hone those skills. Additionally, really leverage the community of existing personalities. It is early days, and even the PewDiePies of the world, while they might be hard to contact one-to-one, they all seem really interested in helping out up-and-comers. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being in the early days of a platform.
Well, Greg, I have to say you've influenced me to look deeper into this, so thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Take care.